Have you ever felt like you're being pulled in a million different directions, trying to do what's best for your family while also trying to, keep your own life afloat?
It's a balancing act.
It is,
For sure.
especially when it comes to caring for aging parents,
Yeah.
and all of the challenges that come with that, both financially and emotionally. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a potential solution called the Sell and Stay program.
Sounds interesting.
And we're going to be using a caregiver's Crossroads as our guide for this deep dive.
Okay.
So whether you're dealing with something similar in your own life or just curious about new ways to approach elder care, I think you'll find some valuable insights here.
I think so too.
So let's dive in. The first scenario we're going to look at introduces us to Margaret,
What?
who is a dedicated daughter caring for her 93-year-old mother, Evelyn. Now, Margaret's days are pretty much consumed with taking care of her mom, managing her medications, cooking, helping her with, personal care, driving her to appointments. It's basically a full-time job.
Yeah, sounds like it.
But here's the thing. Evelyn's other children don't really seem to grasp the scope of what Margaret's doing. They'll visit occasionally, praise Margaret for her efforts, but they're kind of oblivious
That happens.
to the sacrifices that she's making behind the scenes.
Yeah, and that is something that we see play out often in families. There's this societal expectation, especially for daughters, to step into these caregiving roles.
Right.
Without anyone really acknowledging the toll that it takes, the financial burden, the emotional strain.
Yeah, and Margaret's story really illustrates that. She's had to put her own life on hold, drain her savings, even dip into her retirement funds, just to make the house accessible for Evelyn.
Oh, wow.
And meanwhile, her siblings are complimenting her on how good their mom looks,
Oh, the irony.
totally missing the financial strain and the exhaustion that Margaret's dealing with.
Right. And that's where things can get really tricky because that kind of dynamic often breeds resentment. And it's not because caregivers are unwilling to help. It's just that the burden becomes unsustainable without any support.
Yeah, it's not just about the time commitment, it's about the financial implications as well.
Absolutely.
The cost of caregiving is often overlooked. And, think about what could happen down the line. Let's say Margaret had to sell the house after Evelyn passes away. Her siblings, who haven't contributed anything, might suddenly feel entitled to a share of the proceeds.
It's like a recipe for family discord.
Exactly.
But that's where things take a really interesting turn in this scenario.
Okay.
Because Evelyn recognizes the sacrifices Margaret is making. And she actually proposes a solution, the Sell and Stay program. Specifically, the idea of selling the house to an investor, but allowing her to continue living there as a tenant.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does this actually benefit Margaret?
Well, it allows Evelyn to access her home equity, right? Which gives her the funds to actually compensate Margaret for all those years of caregiving. And that's huge because it's not just a financial transaction.
Right.
It's an acknowledgement.
It's saying, I see you and I value what you're doing.
Exactly.
Wow.
It shifts the dynamic from Margaret feeling obligated to care for her mother to Evelyn actually seeking a way to care for her daughter.
That's amazing.
It is. Plus, it kind of eliminates potential disputes down the line with siblings.
Oh, right.
Because the proceeds go to Evelyn, so she decides how they are distributed.
Makes sense.
And, it recognizes Margaret's contributions fairly.
I like that. It's a much more equitable approach.
Right.
But I'm guessing Margaret doesn't immediately jump at this idea, right?
Yeah, she's hesitant at first.
Yeah.
Almost like she feels guilty
Oh, I can see that.
about accepting payment
Right.
for caring for her mom.
This is my mom. I should just do this out of love.
Exactly. And, there's a societal expectation there, too.
I think so.
We tend to romanticize family caregiving, especially for daughters. Like it's just something they should do, no questions asked, no compensation needed.
Right, without expecting anything in return.
Exactly. And I think it's important that we challenge that narrative.
Yeah.
Acknowledge the economic value of caregiving.
Yeah.
In this case, accepting compensation is not only practical, it's also a way for Evelyn to express her gratitude and to ensure her daughter's financial well-being.
So Evelyn's proposal, this sell and stay idea, it's a potential solution to both the financial and emotional strain that Margaret is experiencing.
It is.
It's really interesting how this program kind of flips the script on traditional caregiving dynamics.
Right. It's a different way of thinking about things.
Yeah.
But what if Margaret wanted more control over the situation?
Okay.
That's where our second scenario comes in.
All right, let's hear it.
Imagine Margaret becoming the buyer, not just an outside investor.
Whoa. Okay, so Instead of selling to some random investor, Evelyn sells the house to Margaret, and she stays there as a tenant. But would that even work financially? I mean, how could Margaret afford to buy the house after, all the financial strain she's already been under?
That's where a special type of loan comes in, called a DSCR loan.
Okay.
And it's particularly well-suited to these sell-and-stay situations.
Okay, I gotta admit, I need a little DSCR loan explainer here. What exactly are we talking about?
So DSCR stands for Debt Service Coverage Ratio.
Got it.
It's basically a metric that lenders use to assess the profitability of an investment property. With a DSCR loan, the lender is really interested in the potential rental income from the property. So in this case, the rent that Evelyn would be paying to Margaret.
Oh, okay. So instead of just focusing on Margaret's income and credit score, they're taking into account the income that the property itself is going to generate.
Exactly. They want to make sure that the rental income can cover those mortgage payments and all the other expenses that come with owning a property.
So in this scenario, Evelyn's rent payments would be contributing to Margaret's mortgage. Okay, I'm starting to see how this could work. Margaret becomes the owner of the house, which secures her future and gives her more control over the situation.
Right.
And Evelyn gets to stay in her home and continue contributing to the costs, but she still maintains a sense of independence.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
It really is fascinating how this program offers different solutions.
It is.
But it's clear that both of these scenarios come with their own complexities and considerations. It's not a simple decision, whether to sell to an investor or to have a family member become the buyer.
Right.
So many different factors to weigh. We've got two very different approaches to sell and stay,
We do.
both with their own advantages and potential challenges. And I'm sure there are a lot of legal and financial aspects that we need to unpack to fully understand the implications of each option.
Absolutely. And we've really only just scratched the surface here.
Yeah.
But before we get into all of that, the nitty-gritty details,
Yeah.
I think it's important to pause and consider the emotional weight of these decisions. How would each option impact Margaret's sense of autonomy? How would it affect Evelyn's feelings of independence and control?
Those are such important questions because it's not just about the practicalities. It's about the emotional well-being of everyone involved.
It is, and that's a conversation that we're going to dive into in our next segment.
Can't wait. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Welcome back. We've been exploring this sell and stay program as like a unique approach to elder care
It is unique.
where, aging homeowners can sell their houses but still stay there, keep living there.
Right.
We've seen how this program can offer solutions to some of those financial and emotional strains that come with caregiving.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering about like the psychological impact of it all.
Yeah.
How does each sell and stay option affect like the dynamics between the homeowner and the caregiver?
Yeah, that's an important piece to consider. It's often overlooked, I think, in these conversations.
Right.
Like, let's revisit that scenario where Evelyn sells her house to an investor.
Mm-hmm.
On the one hand, it provides financial relief for Margaret, right?
Right.
It acknowledges all the care she's been giving. But it also introduces, a third party into the mix.
Oh, that's interesting. So would having this outside investor involved potentially create a sense of distance?
It could. I mean, there's now someone else calling the shots,
Right.
making decisions about the property, and, their priority might be profit, not necessarily the emotional well-being of the tenant.
Right.
So Margaret, who's been the primary caregiver all this time, might feel a loss of control over the situation.
That makes sense. And how might Evelyn feel about having a stranger as her landlord, especially in a house full of memories and personal belongings,
Yeah, I think that could be unsettling,
Yeah.
That sense of ownership, that security that comes with having a place to call your own, it could be diminished. And it's important to remember, I think, that for a lot of seniors, their home is more than just a place to live. It's an extension of themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So even though this option, selling to an investor, offers financial benefits and could prevent those potential conflicts with siblings,
Right.
there are some emotional costs that we need to consider for both Evelyn and Margaret.
Definitely. Now, let's think about that scenario where Margaret becomes the buyer.
Okay.
It keeps the property within the family, but it also kind of blurs the lines a bit
In what way?
between caregiver and landlord.
Oh, okay. Wouldn't that actually solidify Margaret's role, though, as like the one in charge?
It could, yeah, but it also introduces a new layer of complexity to their relationship. You know, Margaret's not just a daughter anymore. She's the property owner, and that comes with certain responsibilities.
So while it might give Margaret a sense of control and security, it could also create tension.
Definitely.
Imagine having to enforce rules or make decisions about repairs that clash with her mother's wishes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Navigating those boundaries could be tricky. Something that was once a daughterly act of kindness, like fixing that leaky faucet, now becomes a landlord's obligation.
Right, yeah.
And that could easily lead to misunderstandings or resentment.
It's so interesting how each option has its own emotional challenges.
Yeah, isn't it?
Really emphasizes the need for open communication and clear expectations no matter what they decide.
I think that's key. And this is actually where professional guidance could be really valuable.
Oh.
Like a therapist specializing in family dynamics, they could help Margaret and Evelyn navigate these sensitive conversations.
Yeah.
Ensure that everyone's needs and concerns are heard and respected.
It's about more than just legalities and finances.
So much more.
It's about understanding those emotional undercurrents that shape these decisions. Okay, so we've talked about feelings. Now let's talk logistics.
All right.
What are some crucial steps involved in, actually setting up a sell and stay agreement?
Well, first and foremost, you need a solid purchase agreement.
Okay.
It's a legal document that outlines all the terms of the sale, the purchase price, closing date, all those details.
Okay, that makes sense. But since the original homeowner is sticking around as a tenant,
Yeah.
wouldn't you also need a lease agreement as well?
Absolutely. The lease agreement is crucial.
Okay.
It establishes a clear understanding of the rights and responsibilities of both parties. So you have the homeowner, who's now the tenant,
Right.
and the new owner, whether that's an investor or someone like Margaret.
Yeah. So the lease would cover things like the rent amount, how long the lease is for,
Exactly.
and who's responsible for maintenance and repairs, stuff like that.
It's all about creating that legally binding framework for the ongoing tenancy. Protects the homeowner's right to live there
Right.
and the new owner's right to, manage the property.
It sounds like having a good lawyer is essential. Someone who can make sure all the details are taken care of, especially with family dynamics involved.
Absolutely. You want someone who understands real estate law
Right.
and can draft those agreements that are clear, fair, and legally sound.
And I imagine an experienced real estate agent could be helpful too.
Definitely. Someone who's familiar with these sell and stay transactions.
Right, yeah.
They can guide you through the process, connect you with potential investors and buyers, just make sure everything runs smoothly.
It's amazing how something that seems so simple on the surface, like selling a house,
You'd think so, right?
yeah, suddenly becomes so complex when you factor in all the emotional and legal stuff,
The layers.
the layers, with a sell and stay arrangement.
Exactly.
It really highlights the importance of planning ahead, seeking expert advice, and having those sometimes difficult conversations.
Couldn't agree more.
And speaking of tough conversations, there's one aspect of sell and stay that we haven't touched on yet,
Oh.
which is Medicaid.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Medicaid eligibility is a big concern for a lot of seniors.
Huge.
So how does sell and stay affect that?
Well, it's a tricky area,
Okay.
and the rules can vary from state to state.
Right.
But generally, Medicaid has this look-back period of 5 years,
Okay.
meaning that any large financial transactions, like selling a home within that time frame, could affect eligibility for benefits.
So if Evelyn sells her home, receives a lump sum payment,
Right.
that could potentially disqualify her from Medicaid.
It's possible, depending on how those funds are used and how her assets are structured,
Okay.
which is why it's crucial to consult with an elder law attorney,
Right.
someone who specializes in Medicaid planning.
It's a reminder that there's so much to think about with this decision. It's not just about those immediate financial needs or the emotional needs.
That's about the long game.
Yeah, it's about planning for the future and making sure there's access to those essential services.
Absolutely. And that's actually a perfect segue into our next segment.
Okay.
We've explored the pros and cons, the emotional side, the practical considerations of sell and stay.
Right.
But now let's shift our focus to you, the listener. What's resonated with you? What questions are you wrestling with?
Yeah, we want to hear your thoughts.
Absolutely.
Stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We've spent this whole episode talking about the Sell and Stay program, exploring how it could help families dealing with those tough challenges of elder care. It's been a lot to unpack, right? It has. A lot of layers. We've talked about the financial benefits, the emotional stuff, legal considerations, even potential Medicaid implications.
It really shows you how complex these situations can be. And there's no magic answer, no solution that's going to work for everyone. What works for one family might not be the right fit for another.
Yeah, exactly. Like we discussed those two scenarios, selling to an outside investor versus a family member becoming the buyer.
Right.
Both have their pros and cons.
They do.
But as we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to bring it back to you, the listener.
Yeah, this is about you.
We've thrown a lot of information your way.
We have.
But it's not about overwhelming you.
Right,
it's about giving you the tools you need
Empowering you.
to make informed decisions.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to the well-being of your loved ones.
The knowledge is power.
Right. Exactly. So let's take a minute to reflect. If you were Margaret, trying to figure out the best way to support your mom while also looking out for your own future, what would feel right to you? What would resonate?
Think about those options. Selling to an investor, it's a clean break, it's financial relief.
Right.
Potentially avoids those family conflicts down the road.
Yeah.
But you're also bringing someone else into a very personal situation.
That's true.
Could create distance, a feeling of losing control.
On the flip side, becoming the buyer keeps everything in the family, gives your aging parent that sense of security and continuity, but it also blurs those lines, caregiver versus landlord.
Yeah.
It could add strain to the relationship, and suddenly you've got all these new responsibilities on your plate.
It's a balancing act, for sure.
Liz.
It's a decision that requires you to really think about your values, your financial situation, your goals, all of it.
And remember, it's not just about you. It's about understanding what your aging parent needs and wants, respecting their independence while also making sure they're taken care of.
That's the heart of it.
And don't forget about seeking guidance along the way.
Right.
Talk to those financial advisors, elder law attorneys, real estate agents, all those experts.
They're there to help.
They can provide those insights, help you navigate those complexities,
Exactly.
and make sure you're making informed decisions that are right for your unique situation.
It's about finding what works for you.
And communication is key too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Talk to your siblings, talk to your parents, maybe even a therapist who specializes in family dynamics.
It's about having those open and honest conversations.
Addressing those concerns.
Yeah.
Finding ways to collaborate, work together.
Makes all the difference.
It's about approaching these challenges with empathy and understanding and being open to creative solutions.
Like sell and stay.
Exactly. Sell and stay is just one example of how families are, trying new things, challenging those old ways of thinking about elder care,
Right.
and finding ways to honor the dignity and independence of their aging loved ones.
But also acknowledging the needs of the caregivers.
Yes, because caregivers matter too.
And this conversation doesn't end here.
Right.
Elder care is constantly evolving. There are new programs popping up, new solutions, new resources.
So stay informed.
Stay curious.
Stay engaged.
Yeah, that's what the deep dive is all about, right?
Absolutely. We're not just giving you information, we're encouraging you to dig deeper, to question, to explore.
To think for yourselves.
And most importantly, to take what you've learned and apply it to your own life.
To your own families.
Make choices that create a brighter future for you and your loved ones.
Because you have the power to do that.
So as we wrap up this episode, one final thought. What steps, even small ones, can you take today to approach these challenges of elder care with, more knowledge, more confidence, more compassion?
It can feel like a daunting journey.
But you're not alone.
You've got this.
Until next time, keep diving deep.